Whenever you do something you love, it becomes a renewable source of energy for you. It unlocks creativity, energy, enthusiasm, and it's no wonder like I'm doing all this crazy stuff right now because I did something that I loved.
Welcome to the Pivotal Leader Podcast with Gina, featuring lively interviews with CEOs, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who share their stories and best practices for shifting business from problems to profits. Sit back and get ready to pivot.
Hey everyone, this is Gina, Chief Results Officer of Pivot 10 Results, a strategy and training company that helps businesses shift from people problems to performance results. Each week on The Pivotal Leader, I feature inspirational leaders who know how to positively impact their customers, employees, and brands through culture building. On this episode of The Pivotal Leader, I interviewed Julian Placino, who, by the way, he's the only Julian Placino out there, as he told us on the interview. He is a recruiting professional with 12 years of experience in agency and corporate staffing. He's been instrumental in advancing the careers of hundreds of technology, creative, and sales professionals around the country. For 7 years, he led acquisition for Bottle Rocket, one of the premier mobile development firms in the world. And I think really his time at Bottle Rocket is pretty pivotal in how he got to where he is today. And I think the Bottle Rocket work culture is pretty cool in what it's done for him and where he is. So you're going to love the juiciness of that in the interview. He is also the creator of the Pathways to Success podcast in iTunes, where he conducts in-depth interviews with world-class performers to discover their mindsets, tactics, and behaviors. He's interviewed CEOs, New York Times bestselling authors, TEDx speakers, celebrity athletes, company founders, leading entrepreneurs, and prolific thought leaders. I think I need to make an ask so I can be on his show. You always have to ask for what you want. Having a passion for helping the staffing industry evolve, Julian founded the Pathways to Success training company, which helps staffing companies gain new clients by teaching client empathy, personal branding, and innovative marketing strategies. Having a unique and engaging presentation style, Julian was signed to the theatrical and broadcast division of one of the most prestigious talent agencies in the country, Kim Dawson. He has done acting, modeling, and voiceover work for AT&T, Ford, NFL, American Heart Association, Edward Jones, Hilti USA, ABM Aviation, Orthofix, and more. Oh, there's so much in this interview I think you're going to enjoy. So sit back and enjoy this interview with Julian Placino. All right, let's get this thing started. Julian, welcome to the Pivotal Leader today.
Thank you so much for having me on.
So excited to have you on. And, I love connections and networking, and so many people have connected me with so many amazing people in your area of the country. I feel like I need to move there because there's so many cool people. But we got on a call a couple weeks ago and we were talking about your story and how you got to where you are. And the Pivotal Leader were so much about how can people take some tips to impact and change their culture, be better leaders, generate more sales and revenue. And I think your story is quite fascinating because you come from the recruiting world. And I think that's important. So I want to talk a little bit about that today because, attracting and retaining top talent is a challenge. So we'll get into that a little bit. But before we do, I'd like you to share with our listeners your story. How did you go from recruiter to podcaster to all around amazing, I want to be like Julian kind of guy?
Well, so my professional background has been in talent acquisition. So I come from the agency world of recruitment, where I did third-party recruiting, primarily in the technology world. So infrastructure and also development has been my sweet spot. For the last 7 years of my corporate career, I oversaw talent for a company called Bottle Rocket, one of the world's premier mobile development firms. So although I've been working a corporate career for more than a decade, I've actually been very entrepreneurial. I found out very early on the importance of developing multiple streams of income. And because of that, I tried many different business ventures as side hustles while I was working a corporate job. So real estate, network marketing, internet business. And they were all great experiences, but I never really achieved any kind of great success with any of them. And luckily for me at Bottle Rocket, it's a very creative company. It's a big do-what-you-love company. And not only do they preach this, but they give their individual Rocketeers opportunities to express that love. And one of the ways we do this is by something called rocket science, where for a period of 24 hours, we have a hackathon and you can build anything that you want. And in March of 2016, I started the Pathways to Success podcast, which was my rocket science project. And that has completely transformed my life over the last 3 years, led to me becoming a sponsored podcaster, professionally represented actor and model, keynote speaker. And in the last 6 months, I built a consulting company, which replaced my income. My last day as an employee was March 15th. And now I'm on the full-time path of entrepreneurship.
Wow. And when you say March 15th, you say March 15th of 2019.
Of 2019, yes.
Wow. Well, good for you. That is pretty inspiring. And I think that's what inspired me when I was talking to you, because so many people want to get out there and do their own thing, but they don't know how to. And it seems like you did it pretty quickly. And it sounds like it got sparked from your rocket science project of creating your podcast.
Yeah, it was the first time I started something entrepreneurial that I did not set the measures of success being money or anything material. And as a matter of fact, in 2016, I was burning out out of trying to find my entrepreneurial identity. And I love all of my time at Bottle Rocket, but the truth was I felt like I could give more. And this is the first time I tried just to do something for the love of doing it. And for a long time, I didn't have the courage to do whatever that was. But really putting my head down, following my passion, and doing work that I love, I'm a big believer in finding the intersection of your natural strengths, areas of interest, and value creation for others. Because whenever you find that bullseye, to me, you find more than just a job or a business, but like a mission and a calling.
Right.
And that's exactly what I have experienced so far.
And when you were at Bottle Rocket, tell us a little more about what Bottle Rocket is and does.
Yeah, so they are a world-class mobile app development firm. So they build mobile apps and world-class websites. They're the developer behind apps for Chick-fil-A, Starwood Hotels, Coca-Cola Freestyle. They have well over, I think, 350 world-class mobile experiences in the App Store and in the Play Store.
Oh, cool. So you were in a really kind of innovative, progressive environment and culture that fostered that kind of creativity for everybody, not just the people developing apps, but even the guy in talent acquisition.
Very much so. And as a matter of fact, honestly, as amazing of an event as rocket science is, every year I always dreaded it because the bulk of individuals who make things at Bottle Rocket, they're software engineers, they're creatives, they're designers. And I was the sole recruiter at Bottle Rocket. And I always felt so intimidated, like, what am I going to build, right? But I knew I always loved having conversations with interesting people. And this was me just capturing those conversations and sharing them with others.
I think this is a really interesting thing because when you look at trying to create a creative and innovative culture that actually attracts talent, for someone like you who wasn't one of those kind of engineer type of guys, and they are, or girls, a definitely different type of personality, what would some advice that you would give to an organization that's trying to create that culture that everybody, even someone who doesn't really think that they're techie or creative, can get immersed into the culture and feel like they're making a contribution?
I think try to find ways to do it small. You don't have to do like this entire kind of ground up, reinvention of the company. Can you do it for 1 hour? Can you get everyone just to budget 1 hour and see what happens when you create something and look at the data, and based on that data, either scrap it or create an iteration? And for me, that's just been my way of doing things now, is giving it a shot, doing the best that I can, looking at the data, and based on that, you grow, right? And in software development, that's a lot of times it's, I'm no expert in this, but that's the agile process. It's less of like building an entire software and then shipping it, but making an MVP or minimal viable product, seeing what it does, and then iterating from there.
Great suggestion. So they don't have to do it big. They can do an MVP version of anything that they're doing to move their culture to the next place.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of the full 24 hours, try 1 hour and see what happens.
Small. So you decided, all right, my rocket science is going to be a podcast. And what inspired that? Where'd that come from?
I was really into podcasts. So several podcasters I greatly admired: Lewis Howes, School of Greatness, the Tim Ferriss Show. And the more and more I got immersed in podcasts, the more and more I was thinking, man, I could do this. As a recruiter, I've interviewed hundreds of individuals. I've hired hundreds of individuals. This was just a different spin. It was a repurposing of my ability to interview. Instead of screening people in or screening people out, this was more about learning their best practices and sharing them with others. And I was sort of well equipped to do that.
That sounds so cool. So you get started, and tell us a little more about your podcast.
So the Pathways to Success is about me interviewing various leaders about their journeys to success. I try to have conversations that inform, educate, inspire, and transform, right? So it can be anything about entrepreneurship and health and wellness and just really great stories. I've had the privilege of interviewing company founders, CEOs, New York Times bestselling authors, TEDx speakers, American Ninja Warriors, just a whole host of incredible individuals. And it really has been transformative in my life. And it's very much well documented.
Do you have any favorite? I mean, every guest is a favorite guest, I like to say, as a podcaster, but do you have some pivotal moments that jump out at you from a guest standpoint or a leadership guest point of like, oh, that? Because for me as a podcaster, I learn from every single podcast. Like 100%. It's like an MBA program for me. Any big significant ahas for you?
Yeah. So I think for me, the biggest episode that really I felt something was starting to bubble was actually episode 100. And I didn't have a guest on. It was basically me giving kind of a state of the union of what was going on with the podcast, right? Of, where I was and where I was at and where I was going with the show. But after episode 100, someone reached out to me. She actually became a guest. Her name is Christina Rossini, so I'll give her a shout out. And she said, "Hey, Julian, how did you go about building your personal brand?" Then I said, "Personal brand? What does that even mean? I'm not like Beyonce or Britney Spears or any celebrity. I thought it was just like the celebrities that had that." But what she was referring to was this social footprint that I created because of all of this content. I mean, by that time I had like 300 hours worth of content out there. And I discovered that a personal brand is a way for people to get to know who you are, what you value, what you do without ever meeting you, right? And that's like real equity that works for you without you being active in it. And now I've become a keynote speaker on personal branding. And not just that, I've learned that not only can I create for myself, but I now create for others. So part of my consulting company is like an employer branding piece and also creative marketing. I'm taking all these skills that I learned as a content creator, now using it to create for others. I've become a kind of a producer of some sorts.
I can totally relate to that. I totally 100% relate to that, especially from the personal branding standpoint. Mm-hmm. I have this podcast, The Pivotal Leader, and over time, and I wanted to be able to have a personal brand, but I didn't know it in the moment because The Pivotal Leader became a show that was really about highlighting and spotlighting other leaders and thought leaders in C-suite. And it was really about making it about them because that's also my improv background, right? Our number one job on stage is to make other people look good. So when you come from the mindset of my job is to make you look good, I automatically look good. So I don't have to do much other than be of service and give to that guest to highlight them, and then I look good. And everybody wins, right? Our listeners, our potential clients, they all get value from it. You get value from it. I learned something new, win-win all across the board. And then I started thinking, how do I immerse some more of me into something without taking away from someone else, right? Like, so there's some personal branding involved in this, but that's when we created a second podcast. So the second podcast, The Women Your Mother Warned You About, which I have a co-host, so it's still not all about me, right? I have a co-host and we have guests, but we have a little more freedom to be exactly who we are. Not that I'm not exactly who I am right now, but I'm always like, how can I make Julian look good right now? And then other podcasts, I can have a little more of my 2 cents in it from a personal branding standpoint. And it's been fascinating because all of a sudden you have like, I'm sure this happens to you. You start getting these different super fans and followers and people who reach out to you. Does that happen to you? Because we get a lot of people reach out to us and go, "Thank you so much. You have no idea how you've impacted me."
Yeah, no, absolutely. So it's not a huge following, but I just crossed my 10,000th follower on LinkedIn, 100% organic. Just based on
that's pretty big, Julian.
Yeah, no, it's been really awesome. I mean, the podcast is one thing. My LinkedIn following is something completely different. And it really kind of came full circle for me when I did my first live podcast recording about a month ago at the Network Bar. And all I did was promote native video on LinkedIn. And I hit the 65 RSVP limit in 3 days just by promoting it to my audience. And I learned that it became a true distribution channel that I could use to share good ideas with and make specific calls to action. So every time I'm going to a speech or if I'm promoting an event, I go straight to LinkedIn. I spoke at City Central here at the co-working space that I office out of. And last Wednesday, I think it was, and I promoted and we filled up the house 100 seats just by promoting on LinkedIn. So it became this very real thing for me. And I see it as a way to positively influence people.
So back up a little bit. Tell us more about the LinkedIn native. I don't know what you said, but what is this? Tell us more about that.
Yeah. So I started posting, as a recruiter, I've always used LinkedIn as a sourcing tool to find candidates, right? But only in February of 2018 did I start using it as a publisher, as a method, as a medium to produce content. Because around 2018, I'd already been podcasting for a couple of years and I built this muscle, right? This muscle of content creation. So I've always been passionate about my discipline of recruiting and was thinking, what would happen if I just created some helpful videos about recruiting and posting them on LinkedIn? Well, I made one video on cold calling and it generated 34,000 views in 9 days. Wow. And I was like, wow, there's something to this, right? So then I posted another video, then another video, then another video. And now my content has been seen well over 500,000 times. And I was seen as kind of a thought leader in recruiting just because I was putting myself out there. And all of these recruiters and salespeople around the country started asking me for advice and for coaching and for speaking and telling me their training pain points. And what I did is I codified all the themes that I kept seeing in terms of training. I turned that into my MVP, my first training product, and I sold it twice. And that is what allowed me to build my consulting company. So I built credibility as a trainer, acquired my first two clients, and over the past 60 days, I've secured 6 figures worth of retained income, which allowed me to quit my job and go build my company.
That's amazing. That is so inspiring. So is that something that you now teach other people how to do?
It seems like it's happening kind of organically because, before I used to speak on purely recruiting. Now I get to speak I'm speaking at Disrupt HR on personal branding. I spoke at City Central about entrepreneurship. I'm speaking at Podcast Outlier in Austin on May 18th, and it's about podcasting. But my title of my talk is "Don't Do It for the Downloads." In ERE in Washington, I'm flying out there. I'm speaking about recruiting also, and I just got booked to speak for Staples. So I'm being exposed to retail audiences. They want to know how I side hustled my way into a 6-figure business. So it's all sorts of things now. It's like my brand is kind of changing as I continue to pursue and try to help people with whatever it is that I'm good at.
Yeah. And it sounds like you were establishing a personal brand while you didn't know you were establishing a personal brand just by doing all those videos on LinkedIn.
My talk was called "How I Accidentally Quadrupled My LinkedIn Following and Built a 6-Figure Business." Because the truth is, that's all it was. I was just listening to what the market was telling me, and that's one of the greatest things I've seen about social media. It acts as a great feedback mechanism. Yeah. It helps you gain self-awareness.
I think that's a big thing that I've learned is, especially through the podcast, we have people that reach out, especially on the other podcasts, on things that they want to see us do or they wish that we had that we offered. And so it's a constant really listen to what the market is saying and evolve with it.
100%. And that literally was how I built my company, was listening to what all my followers were telling me on LinkedIn, turning that into a product, and then selling it right back to the market. Yeah.
Welcome to America.
Yeah, no, but it's beautiful. I see nothing wrong with it.
No,
they gave me a pain point. Amazing. I created a product. I took it to market and exchanged the commensurate value for it. I think it's perfect.
And I think there's huge value in this that everybody listening needs to pay attention to. A lot of times people don't realize the talent that they have, the value that they have, what they really can bring to market because it comes natural to you or it happened organically. And sometimes we take it for granted that what we have, people want. And we think, oh, what's the big deal? This is just what I do.
That is what I've really learned about the power of perspective, because you are who you are. You automatically think everyone seems to kind of be good at what you do, right?
Correct.
That's why there's this whole self-awareness journey that I have been on for the past, 5 years, but becoming more self-aware about who I was, what I valued, what I was good at, what I was bad at. I was able to pursue these very specific opportunities that I sort of had natural competitive advantages in. Right?
Yeah.
Like I didn't know I could be on camera and someone would pay me for certain thing. I didn't know I could speak in front of audiences. I didn't know I could go teach. I have no training background, right? But it's like I just kept taking action and listening to what the market was telling me and really trying to help people with my experience.
I think you and I share a lot of parallels along those lines because I fell into speaking, I fell into training, and then there are days when I've had those moments of imposter syndrome that I've had to just really kind of kick myself and be like, no, I'm just this is how it happened, and I'm
Yeah.
natural at it. But then there's also the practice of it. I think owning an improv comedy theater has been super helpful for me.
Hmm.
To be on a stage, to be able to read an audience, to be able to connect, all those things kind of went hand in hand. And again, listen to the market. People said,
Yeah.
can you come speak? People, right? I'm sure that whole roller coaster has been fascinating for you because it's not something you ever set out to do.
It's the craziest thing in the world, man. And especially the things that are happening right now, because on the podcast, like, especially when you're interviewing, what dawned on me is that I was kind of helping tell stories, right?
Right.
And a lot of the projects I'm being pulled into is, I think I'm moving into film. I'm cast into a movie, and I'm actually now an executive producer of it, and I'm learning the business of movies, right?
Wow.
So it's this beautiful kind of like intersection of like my love for business, content creation, storytelling, and I do the acting and the modeling and stuff, right? So it's so strange,
And
I mean,
and the acting and the modeling came after as well, right?
yeah, I got picked up from by Kim Dawson because of the podcast.
So amazing.
Yeah. And now I've been commercials for AT&T, Ford, American Heart Association, did a shoot for Indeed.com. I did a thing for OFS Furniture just a week ago. I'm shooting for ABM and DFW Airport next Tuesday. My life is crazy right now, what I mean?
So how do you manage all of this, and how are you going to scale, or have you even thought that far ahead? Because you got a lot going on.
You know what, Gina? I, for 10 years, can prove it to you that I have books and books and books of goals that I've written down, I've set, and I've achieved. And after reflecting upon them, I can't really say I've gained any kind of fulfillment from them, right?
Yeah.
But now I'm setting more sort of intentions. Instead of saying, hey, I'm going to set a $10,000 goal this month, now I just say, I'm going to look to create new value for my customers, right? And really, I come from a very spiritual worldview. So to me, my whole message is about stewardship. It's like for the first time ever, I'm understanding the gifts that I have. I'm intentionally like improving upon them and using them to creatively help other people. And you know what? The results seem to be coming even faster this way. So the first time ever, I'm not planning so far in advance, but just kind of surrendering myself to the process. And that seems to be more than enough. One more thing that allows me to do, whenever I set goals in the future, it always gives me this, I'm going to be happy when, I'm going to be happy when. But when I live this way, every day is the best day of my life. I'm fully present here with you right now because of this intention.
Yeah. That's amazing. What a different way to look at it.
Yeah. And maybe that'll change again in the future. I don't know, but I can tell you it's working right now. And
whatever you're doing is working.
Yeah.
And and I got to imagine to some extent, and I'm huge into the surrender. And I don't know if you've ever read the Surrender Experiment.
No.
By Michael Singer. The Surrender Experiment, he's also written The Untethered Soul.
Okay.
And so if you're spiritual, both of his books would be amazing for you. But he really talks about his journey now I can't remember the tech company that he ended up founding, but he ended up becoming like some millionaire, billionaire guy. But everything came from the surrender.
Mm-hmm.
Like he had no intention to like be a millionaire or have all this, financial abundance. Everything just kind of happened. Mm-hmm. Because he just always surrendered to everything.
Yeah.
I think you would really enjoy that book. So that's a pretty cool book. So that surrender piece of it to me is extremely liberating.
It really is. And in being very analytical, the reasons why I couldn't surrender before is because I was just afraid. I was afraid of losing control. I was afraid of the unknown. But when you surrender, you just learn so much more about yourself when you allow yourself to be in the fear, push past it, and I'm still alive and I'm better because of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. When do you sleep?
I sleep it does. It does. Yeah. I actually go to bed pretty early, like 9:30, and I get up about 4:30.
Okay. So I was going to ask you, what is your daily routine like that maybe you could share with people that maybe are some good habits that they can set intentions for?
Yeah, I've always been like a hyper planner, but every morning really does start the same. You ask me a personal question, I will give you my personal honest response. So every day I get up, I pray, I meditate, I exercise, and then I spend the rest of my day relentlessly executing the plan that I created for myself, usually the day before. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty much it. If there was one area that I wish I could be a little bit better at is the whole rest and relaxation. This right here, it doesn't turn off ever, right? But when I impose those on myself, it actually helps me. Like when I'm able to go away from the work, I start making connections from different things in different places. So I totally see the benefits of recharging.
Yeah. So what do you do to recharge?
I read. I spend time with a family. I spend time in silence. I try to go for, walks in nature, getting away from all of this stuff, right? But a lot of times, like I said, that stuff inspires me and helps me in my business.
I would agree. I think many entrepreneurs are very guilty of not recharging. We're wired differently. I like to refer to as telling someone today who's interested in starting a business. I said, well, you have to be an adrenaline junkie, I think, because they're the highs are highs and the lows are lows, and you go on that roller coaster, and you're driven to do it, and you love to do it, and you could sleep, eat, and drink it. And to me, what I've learned is if I don't give myself some sort of a break, and when I say break, we're talking like half a day on Sunday, right? Like, I power through every single day of the week. And yesterday, it was a Sunday, and I had fully intended to like knock out a lot of stuff, and I did nothing. And it felt amazing. Because to your point, while I sat there, I didn't say do nothing. I did things like, let me go grocery shopping. Let me buy food for the week so I can cook. Let me take care of some other personal stuff. Let me sit here on my outdoor deck overlooking the ocean and just sit here and have a cocktail and watch the water.
Yeah.
And that kind of environment and thought process and being in that moment rejuvenates me, and to your point, gives me new ideas. Or when I get in the hot tub, the hot tub, there's something about warm water that all of a sudden I have 10 new ideas. I think I'm relaxing, but not really.
Something I also learned if we're looking for tips, right? And of course, do what you feel is right for you. Do you know the name Maxie McCoy?
No.
Okay. So she's an author, she's a speaker, entrepreneur, right? But I asked her for tips about, speaking in entrepreneurship, and she said that she fasts. And I was like, you fast? Interesting. So I started researching the benefits of fasting. A lot of it, is weight loss oriented, but I started doing that. I don't do any alcohol before 24 hours before I speak. And also I show up in a fasted state. So I do the 16-8 protocol. I eat within an 8-hour window and fast for 16 hours until my speech, right? But I've learned that, dude, I am fully present, like instant word recognition. I have no problem articulating my thoughts when I show up in a fasted state. So I don't know. If that's something you want to try, that's cool. But it seems to work for me. And I built it into a ritual.
So like, let's say you're speaking at noon, you haven't eaten for 16 hours before that.
Yeah.
Okay. What about liquids?
Liquids, I do liquids.
Water,
yeah. So liquids, green tea, water, that's fine. Just no solid foods.
Okay.
And it builds it into kind of a ritual, because I get really nervous before I speak. I know that sounds crazy, but
I do too. I'm always nervous.
It's one of my biggest anxieties still to this day, right?
Yeah,
but since the podcast, I've given like 300 speeches, and you'd think I'd be over it by now, but I'm not.
Never.
But when I start doing it though, like within 60 seconds in, I feel like I was doing something I was born to do.
Yeah. Again, it's like the high, the adrenaline. Like, like if you told me there's only one thing I could do, it would be speaking. Which is crazy because I'm so nervous.
Me too. And I get a sense just from engaging with you, people probably think that's crazy about you too, because you're natural at it, right? But I think also that means something, that we care deeply about it. And it keeps me sharp. It keeps me practiced. It keeps me rehearsed. Makes me prepared.
Yeah. And I think it keeps me humbled, because I'm always trying to give the audience what they want.
Yeah.
And if I see that I haven't, I take it really personally. And I'm still trying to overcome that one. That's not an easy one. But getting back to the fasting, I'm a huge believer in intermittent fasting, and I've done it. And to your point, and I'll do like a 3-day juice fast. And I feel amazing by day 3, right? Like all you've been drinking is fruit and vegetables, eating nothing. And by day 3, I'm on such a high. Like I have so much energy, when people think that it would be completely the opposite. But now you've given me something to think about, to do that before speaking. That's a great tip. Thank you.
Yeah. And I'm really big into rituals also. It's like, for me, it's hard for me to relax until I have done something. I've created value. I've done a speech. And that's a lot of times when I can allow myself to relax and maybe have a glass of wine or something like that, like after I do something cool.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely need a glass of wine after.
Yeah. I don't drink before though. I always face that with a very sober mind. And that's always, I've always done it that way.
Yeah. I agree with that. Especially, I'm sure you travel a lot. I travel a lot, and I always make sure I get in way early the day before, and I do nothing that night before. I want to be totally like rested. I just got back from Birmingham, Alabama, where I did a presentation, but I was doing the keynote. I don't know what I was doing. I'm like, what was I thinking when I signed? I'm like, well, I did the keynote, 2 breakout sessions, and then a round table on selling techniques, right? And I was like, what was I thinking? Right? Because just the keynote alone can take
exhausting afterwards.
Take it out of you. Mm-hmm. Even though it's just an hour and a half, you're like, oh my gosh. And then I did 2 breakouts, and I'm like, this was insane for me to do this. Yeah. And to be able to maintain that energy. So, but I've known, I've done this long enough now to know. So the night before, I'm like, not drinking, not getting crazy, I'm just chilling, and that helps me get through kind of a intense day like that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, totally. Yeah, I get it.
So tell us a little bit more, tell our listeners a little bit more about Pathways to Success Training Company. So it's a company that helps staffing companies gain new clients by teaching client empathy, personal branding, innovative marketing strategies. The empathy word really jumps out at me because I think it's something that's so lacking, and creating really good relationships to me is a success, not just in attraction and retention, but also attraction and retention with clients and employees.
Yeah. So where the empathy piece comes from is that I have kind of this mix. I don't know how familiar you are with the staffing world, but it is brutally competitive. There are, I think, like 20,000 staffing companies out there, right? So I come from that background, both recruiting and also sales. But for the last 7 years, I've overseen hiring for a very high profile company. And I've had droves of staffing firms trying to fight to earn my business, right? And I kept seeing the same mistakes over and over and over again. That's why I felt like I was this kind of interesting hybrid of recruitment that I could share what it was like to other recruiters and salespeople, what it's like to be sold to by a staffing company. And that is also part of the MVP that I created. That was my first training product, right? And what's interesting about that product is that I originally sold it as a 45-minute lunch and learn. And they said, these are great ideas, but it's never going to work in a 45-minute lunch and learn. So I retooled my offering, presented it to them, and then they bought. But they didn't buy a 45-minute lunch and learn training. They bought a 6-month retained training engagement. I sold that twice. And then continue to build relationships with my clients. And that is what led me to where I am today.
Wow, that's great. Do you have any specific clients or industries that it's kind of your sweet spot that you like to work in, or are you pretty open?
Right now it's IT staffing firms, right? So I come from the really big ones, Kforce and also Robert Half. They have all these great internal training. They don't need a guy like me. I help the small ones, the small staffing firms with maybe 20 employees, because a lot of times their top producers don't have time to train because they have their own book of business and all that. That's why an outside consultant like myself can help them with performance coaching, leadership training, providing insights. And also I do the employer branding stuff, right? It's like I make videos and podcasts for my client now, given this new skill set that I have.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you, no one in staffing is really doing that. So it's very unique what I'm doing because of the things that I pursued while I was working a corporate job. Yeah.
What do you think the future is of podcasting from this business perspective? Because like you said, not everyone is doing it. I know that my co-host and I were doing a podcast workshop locally for our local chamber because it's people are asking about it and why do you do it? How do you do it? The thing that probably kills me the most and irritates me the most is when people go, how are you making money on that? And I'm like, that's not what it's about. It is, but it isn't.
It is, but it isn't. And you're absolutely right. I say that all the time. It's like whenever some people ask me, I probably say since I started, maybe over 20 people have asked me to help them start a podcast. 2 of them took action and they're doing really good right now. But it's the ones that are like, how do I get my first sponsorship? How do I make money doing this? How many impressions do I need to have? That's the wrong energy to do this. Yeah. As a matter of fact, when I started my podcast, I didn't care who downloaded it. I was kind of doing this for my selfish reasons.
Right.
But that in turn was the right energy. Whenever you do something you love, it becomes a renewable source of energy for you. It unlocks creativity, energy, enthusiasm. And it's no wonder like I'm doing all this crazy stuff right now because I did something that I loved.
When you do something you love, it creates an energy. It's an energy source.
100%.
That is awesome. So what's up on the horizon for you? How can people connect with you? We're getting ready to wrap up the show. How can people get more of Julian?
Yeah, so you can check me out at my website. I'm actually lucky that I'm the only Julian Placino who's ever existed. That really helps from the continuity of my brand.
That's special.
Yeah, so my name is Julian. That's Julian Placino. That's julianplacino.com is my home website. You can also just search my name on any social platform, including iTunes, all the main podcast channels, Instagram. I'm mainly active on LinkedIn, and I'd love to connect with you.
Awesome. Well, it's been such a pleasure to have you on the Pivotal Leader today, Julian.
Thank you, Gina.
And I look forward to continuing to learn from you.
And me from you as well.
Thanks again to Julian, and thank you to our loyal listeners for listening to this episode of The Pivotal Leader. And before I sign off, a couple of reminders. Check out my other podcasts. It's like not just mine, though. I share it. I co-host it with the amazing Rachel Pitts, the Women Your Mother Warned You About, the podcast that makes sales sexy again. So check that out if you're looking for some sales tips. We have some really great sales experts that come on, or sometimes it's just Rachel and myself, or Rachel and myself and Keith Walters, where I met him here on the Pivotal Leader and we became friends, and now he's a partner and contributor to that show. And we've released the beta version of our Spontaneous Selling 1.0 video series, 10 short videos on how to apply improv skills in selling. Basically, how to become more human with other humans. You can find the link in our show notes and use the code PIVOTAL to get this program for only $29. If you're not a reader of show notes, just find your way to pivot10results.com and pull down the solutions menu for sales solutions. You can find all of that information. You can always connect with me directly at Gina at pivot10results.com. Let's connect. Do you have any questions? I can certainly help you out. Would love to chat with you. And until next time, if you want to maximize, you need to improvise. Now it's time for that cool voiceover guy to take us out.
You've been listening to The Pivotal Leader with Gina Trimarco, owner and founder of Pivot 10 Results and Carolina Improv Company. You can find show notes for this episode on our website at thepivotalleader.com. The Pivotal Leader is a production of Pivot 10 Results, a strategy and training company that helps businesses shift from people problems to performance results. If your company needs help pivoting to success, visit pivot10results.com or email Gina at pivot10results.com. And until next time, if you're feeling stuck in your business, it's probably time to pivot.